Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind, Season 2. Let's watch.
No one cares. They don't care.
Shake is not shy at all. Clearly, the way he worded the physical questions were like very off-putting, like made me feel really uneasy about like, oh, I'm looking for a petite girl who I can put on my shoulders.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything strange about that. I think her name's Deepti, that Shake asked some extremely off-putting questions. Yeah, that's putting it lightly.
That's what I was like, ooh, it'd be a doctor and Mrs. Shake places importance on the physical appearance, and I've never met anybody else who's kind of gone through the same life experiences.
Uh-oh. So, okay, I mean, they're both Indian, and they've had much more conversations than we've seen, so I think that's what she's basing it on, that their cultural experience, their family experience overlaps quite a bit. And so for her, that's very appealing and comforting to her. Okay, or maybe it's something else. Maybe they just grew up in the same town or whatever. She's saying like we share a lot of life experiences, and I like that. But the way he asked questions about physical appearance was very off-putting. I thought she would conclude that, well, even if we do share some experiences, I don't want to be with someone with that kind of attitude. But, she actually said some things that seemed to indicate that she might actually be in that direction as well. She could even say, like, well, because she was even kind of intimating that maybe when she was talking with the other woman, that she was saying, you can't word it that way. She didn't say, you can't say that. Like, what does that say about you that you would ask? Like, that's not what she was saying. What she's saying is that you can't word it that way. Meaning, it's okay for you to have the thought that's behind that question, but you have to be nicer or more politically correct or something in your wording. I don't know. I'm putting a lot of words in her mouth. Because if that's true, which I don't know, then that would explain possibly why the door is still open to Shake. That she's like, I don't mind someone who thinks that way because I kind of think that way. Again, I'm making a lot of guesses.
Wow. How the hell am I the one who's like asking girls their, like these kind of superficial questions, and like nobody else is?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if they're editing this heavily, but so she just disclosed something that's pretty personal. Anyone that understands anything would detect in Deepti like, wow, that's a big deal. I mean, there's so many, I don't know for Deepti, but there's a lot of things behind what she just disclosed about losing 80 pounds. What the process was like for her, what it was like before she lost the weight. What was there a problem with bullying or people making her feel like crap, or her family, or I don't know, maybe not. Maybe she lived in a total body positive culture area, who knows. But, for someone to disclose that often, like when we saw with Danielle, it's really interwoven with a lot of personal journey, a lot of pain, a lot of celebration of just like, because you met a goal that you wanted to meet anyway. So, and so on one hand, his response didn't seem connected, seemed self-centered. But on the other hand, I guess another thing to say about what he said was he said the word superficial, which is a good sign-ish. But anyway, so what he says is, how is it that I'm the one who asks all these superficial questions, but none of the other guys do? So on one hand, I don't know if he's getting at this. He's thinking, how, is everyone just going to act like a physical attraction isn't a thing? And I know this is Love is Blind, but I still kind of want to know. I'm trying to get as good of a picture as I can of each person through descriptions. And is everyone just going to act like physical? All the people are just going to act like it's not a thing. How come I'm the only one asking these questions? Okay, but why would you say that after she just disclosed something so personal?
And then I kind of felt kind of ashamed, embarrassed that I did. And I'm like, wow, this is the experiment where you're not supposed to even like, think about that stuff. And I'm like, how am I like thinking about that like the way I am?
Okay. I mean, I don't know if you could get any better than that in terms of, I feel ashamed for being superficial. And, well, what is he ashamed of? Is he ashamed of hurting other people's feelings and being superficial? Or is he ashamed for being different or breaking the rules of Love is Blind? Maybe he'll get into it.
Yeah. I think I've had a lot of body image issues for myself. Because I was out of shape growing up and I was always kind of uncomfortable, I'm like, I kind of would compensate by being with somebody in good shape.
Okay. So I think what he's saying is that he was treated badly because there's nothing wrong with being chubby, right? It's not like scientifically bad. It's just the way society reacts to it. In the same way that there's nothing wrong with being gay, but the way society reacts to you, it can feel bad when you're gay, not because of gay being bad, but because of the way people treat you because you're gay. So anyway, he's talking about how he used to be chubby, in his words, and he would compensate by having more thinner partners or something. Okay. I'm hoping that it'll, go back to her, but she disclosed something big, and now he's sharing, and that's good, but I'd be encouraged if he would say, was that what it was like for you, or what was it like for you? Let's see what he says.
I'm like kind of looking at it objectively now, and probably as a result of this experience, is this a reflection of my own body issues? It kind of is, because like everybody has their demons. Maybe I have more demons in this department than I thought. I
mean, right. You can't get any better than that. He's connecting to the past. He's saying he's taking responsibility. He's starting to see the tip of the iceberg. He's not just blowing it off like, well, I fixed it last night because I thought about it. He's like, maybe I have some demons here. And yeah, most of us do about our bodies, honestly, because our society is incredibly effed up when it comes to body image and self-esteem and value and objectification. So good. I didn't expect that. It's interesting. And I wonder how he got there. Did he just stare into the darkness while he was sleeping in his cot or something? What happened?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you shared that with me. And like, just love that you're being so vulnerable. It makes me so happy.
Yeah, totally. That is a huge green flag for a relationship. There's nothing... If someone exhibits a red flag, but then does something like this. Now, you could argue, well, let's get some more data. Because if this is a pattern of do bad things and then apologize for it, like, what's going on? But along these lines, if someone were to do this, to say, like, I've thought about it and this is my fault. I feel ashamed. I gave it some thought. I think it actually has to do with my own traumas. That's great. That indicates a lot of maturity. It indicates a lot of introspection, self-awareness, the ability to admit that you have issues that are related to your past. Yeah, that's a pretty good sign. I'm surprised.
Because I'm not always the most confident. I had a lot of issues with self-esteem and, feeling like I was worth it or all those things, you know what I mean?
So it's good. They're having some real talk. And this... So at first, I'm like, oh no, Deep D, why are you even seeing this guy again? I think they force them together to some extent. I don't know, do they? Anyway, so I was like, oh no, Deep D, like run. But I think this is a good sign. There's a lot of vulnerability here, personal responsibility, owning your feelings, taking care of each other. It's good.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I think the potential that we have here is like really great. And I totally see a future with you. And like, I was just waiting to see this like vulnerable side to you.
Like, I think things might really work out with us.
Yeah.
I really do.
Still a little concerned about him. Again, they edit this, but there's not a lot of him asking her questions. And I don't know about Deep D, but for many women who are heterosexual dating, there can be this lack of expectation that men are going to ask them questions, because men rarely do ask questions, because men are socialized to believe that they matter more. They're socialized to believe that they need to be dominant, particularly in a dating situation, and to ask questions might be seen as being not dominant, being inferior. Men are socialized to constantly be in control, and they're also, and women are more socialized to be more caring and more thoughtful about other people's feelings. Of course, not all women are like that. Not all men are like that. Anyway, point is that in dating situations, it's not uncommon as a woman to be extremely accustomed to men just not asking you questions. And then when men do ask you a question, it just feels weird. It's like, why is he asking me questions? And not every heterosexual dating relationship is like this, of course. There are many men who ask lots of questions, and there are many women who expect lots of questions. But my point is that I don't know if what we're seeing here, but if it's accurate, but we're not seeing a lot of him listening to her and being inquisitive to her. And I wonder if for her, she's used to that.
I wanted to just say something from the heart here. So, when coincidence seems too convenient, I prefer to call that fate.
So this is an interesting story with Shake in that, so I'm pretty sure that the three most hated people are Trisha, Shake, and Shane, at least thus far. I don't know if they redeem themselves later on, but the edit doesn't make them look very good. And so it's tempting to look at Deepti, and I was doing this, and say, run. But, maybe Shake is a horrible person, but he's demonstrated himself, at least in episode 2, to be a lot more thoughtful, caring, relatable, really, to me anyway. I mean, the way he talks, he seems down to earth. The way that some of the other couples flirt, although I don't need to relate to everyone, I don't necessarily relate to them. I'm just like, oh, that's how they flirt. That's fine. But the way that Deepti and Shake talk, at least when it was not of the sort of the first episode with Shake, where he was objectifying everyone, it was relatable, I guess. I'll just put it that way. Anyway, so Shake is saying that for him, Deepti, as he called her Deeps, is, she fits like a puzzle piece. And so it's possible that the experiment that is Love is Blind is working on the first two couples that we see that seem to be coming together, with Danielle and Nick. For the two of them, particularly for Danielle, maybe it's easier for her to open up when she doesn't have to worry about body shame, when she doesn't have to worry about looking a certain way. The freedom of just having it be, blind and there's a wall, maybe allowed her to open up. I don't know. But given the way she was talking about preoccupied attachment, I wonder if she would get tripped up more often. The other thing, actually, that could facilitate for those who are preoccupied is, like Danielle seems to be, I don't know, I'd have to ask her, is that you're sort of guaranteed a second, third, fourth, fifth date with someone. I mean, I don't know how they work it, but it's concentrated, right? It's not like the real world where you have distractions and work. And I mean, I guess you have other people that might get in the way. So I guess that's emulative of the real world. But I don't know. Anyway, point is that for Shake, it seems like maybe for him, I don't know. But I think one story that seems to be emerging is that when Shake is in the real world, he becomes very objectifying and very superficial with people. Possibly, according to him, because he's trying to compensate for the fact that he had very low self-esteem because he didn't like who he was before and he didn't like his body. So he's compensating by always trying to have a beautiful woman to the outside world that looks a certain way so that he can say, look at this, I'm with this person, that validates me. When he's in here, there's really no opportunity for that because he can't see. Now, he does know he knows that Deepti is Indian, so, maybe he has some kind of picture in his mind of what she might look like. And he knows that she's not the sort of, he says, I always date blondes. She said the same thing, by the way. She's like, I only date white men. But anyway, so my point is that for maybe Shake, it's freeing, it's liberating to him to, narrowly focus his dating activities and communication just on words and emotions and bonding and expression, at questions. And I didn't show the scene, but it seemed like, because my question was, is he asking questions? It seemed like maybe he was, not really quite sure. At the very least, Deepti seems very comfortable with him. So I think that's interesting. I think another point to bring up is that I think it's possible that people are like, Deepti, no. But Shake is very different, at least from what we've seen on the show, than Shane. Shane straight up lied in a number of different ways over a number of different moments in a way that is concerning. At least we haven't seen. Shake has not lied, as far as I remember. He was being objectifying, and then he relented. He realized, he said, I'm ashamed, I need to change. So although Shake has some red flags that he exhibited in the beginning, at this point, if you're Deepti, I don't think you're wrong-headed for giving this a chance.
And I've never met someone who seems to understand me the way you do. Our stories are so similar, and they've already begun to intertwine. You make me feel some type of way.
Another thing that we can use from this to talk about our own lives is that there's this common notion that opposites attract, and it's actually not true. It's a trope in cartoons or rom-coms, but it actually isn't demonstrated in the data. We tend to be attracted to people that are very similar to us. Now, sometimes we will really focus on our differences and say, look how different we are. But when you really think about it, it's on average, it's not every successful relationship, and it's even true for friendships as well, that when you really think about it, and you think about all the different similarities you actually do possess between you and the other person, there usually is a long list of similarities. Your values, your sense of humor, the kinds of things you like to do, your political stance, where you grew up, your native language, the sort of TV shows or movies that you watch, the games that you play, the relationships you've had in the past, or whatever it is. There's all these micro examples in there too. And so, although you might find that, oh my God, you're from the city and I'm from the country, and you focus on that as this major difference, but when you actually think about all the things that you do share, you're like, oh, we're very similar, particularly when you compare yourself to everyone else in the world. And like for me and my wife, we grew up in the same area. We grew up just east of Seattle. We call it the East Side. It's east side of Lake Washington. Her in Bellevue and me in Sammamish. And we are the same age, for the most part. She's a couple years younger than me. And we have a similar sense of humor. There's all these sorts of things that are similar. But if we looked at ethnicity, she's white and I'm half Asian. And some people might say that's not that different. But, there's some pretty big differences. Believe me, when we have Thanksgiving and my family brings all their, weird Japanese American dishes, it doesn't go over well with Stacy's family. I mean, they don't criticize it, but let's just say they're not partaking in it. So that's just one example. Anyway, so culturally, we are different in some ways, but in other ways, we're very similar in that we grew up in the same area. Anyway, so why am I saying this? Well, why I'm saying this is we need to dispel the myth that opposites attract, because it's actually not true. Can opposites attract? Sure, but it's not usually the case. The other thing is that when you're dating, it's something to think about. And I think for Shake and Deepti, they're feeling very comfortable. Like, I feel like we know each other. And that's part of what can facilitate a couple. And part of the reason why we can kind of feel that way, I feel like I know you. I feel like you know me. I don't feel like I have to explain everything. I feel like you understand things either very quickly or even without me having to explain it. And a lot of that has to do with a similar upbringing. Now, does that mean you're supposed to stay within your race or your neighborhood or your age group? No, but it is something to think about in terms of, because we sometimes have these ideas of boxes, like I have 10 boxes that I need to be checked before I'm going to date someone. And sometimes that can be wise, but sometimes that actually throws you off from meeting someone who actually will feel deeply connected to you that doesn't necessarily, check all the boxes. Anyway.
I might ask you to approach the wall here.
Oh, I wish I could feel you.
I know. I wish the same thing. So I'm gonna get down on one knee, and Deepti, will you make me the luckiest man in the world and marry me?
It's very romantic. I wish that one of the women would be the one to propose on one knee. We have this. I'm not going to take away from, and I did with my wife. I got down on one knee, and I think my wife had that same, this kind of. She did not expect it. Let's just put it that way. And so it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but we want to start to progress. And I don't know about the people on the show in terms of what their preferences are, but we just take it for granted. I'll just talk a little bit about this because there's a really long lecture that I could go on about sexism and the history of marriage and proposals and dowries and ownership and all that kind of stuff. But just one little detail is that women and when young girls will watch this, I don't know if girls will watch this, but all the rom-coms and cartoons and the prince and the princess, it's very frequently that the man will propose. And of course, at its, foundationally, when we think about marriage and long-term relationship, it's supposed to be a mutual thing. And I think we basically understand that, right? It's not like up to the man, but through this ritual, it symbolizes that the man is the one that initiates the proposal. And the woman is supposed to wait. The woman is supposed to do everything to invite the man in, but it's ultimately the man's choice. Now, of course, other people will say, well, the woman could say yes or no, but it certainly doesn't it'd sort of be like if you walked into a store and you just stood there hoping that a salesperson would come up to you and say, would you like to buy this pair of pants? Instead of you just walking over to the pair of pants and say, that's what I want. It's different. One is waiting and hoping, and the other one is actually asserting yourself. And it's a obviously outdated, sexist idea. And some of our most sexist notions are still completely interwoven within the whole marriage rituals, the getting down on one knee and all that kind of stuff. The fact that you give the woman a very expensive ring and she doesn't necessarily do the same to you. There's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, that's what me and my wife did. But we want to see it for what it is on a certain level, and we want to allow for flexibility. And that's the big point here. It's like when we talk about sexism, we're not saying you're supposed to think a certain way. The key is people should be allowed to do what they want to do. And if a woman wants to propose, and many women are these days, if a woman wants to propose and she doesn't want to wait, she should be able to, and not have anyone react negatively, to propose. And the man, if it's a heterosexual relationship, should not feel emasculated by that, because a woman shouldn't feel inferior if the man gets down on one knee, and the same should be true if, with that. There was one difference in my relationship with my wife, in that she asked me out first. I didn't ask her out. I asked for her phone number, but I didn't think she would say yes, so I didn't bother asking her out, but then she asked me out. So our relationship has a little bit of progressiveness to it.
She's within a physical range that I would date, which, looking back at is such a superficial thing. I put on a front and try to be cool or try to be edgy, all kinds of things that I use to protect myself. I'm very fortunate.
Well, that was one of the hypotheses I believe that I had about him. I was like, okay, let's try to take a guess as to why, because that first episode, there were all these things. I wrote down everything that he said, because there were so many people I felt like I needed to take notes. And so he's like, All my serious relationships have been blonde. There's nothing wrong with that per se. It's just a preference, I suppose. I like younger women. He's 32. He was talking to a 33-year-old woman, and he's like, yeah, I don't know, you're a little old for me. And it's like, huh? And then he said, so can I put you on my shoulders? And he was asking a lot of women these kinds of things. And so he's admitting now. He said he was ashamed of it earlier. He's now saying it's very superficial. And then he gives a reason. It's like, I think I was superficial because I was trying to make up for the fact that I felt really insecure. I was trying to put on this front to make me look more awesome, because the heuristic that a lot of people have, it's like, well, if you have really high standards, then you must be, really special as a person. It's sort of like if you are in a group of people and everyone's deciding what kind of restaurant you're going to go to, you're like, well, I really want to make sure this restaurant is top notch. It just kind of makes you look like, oh, you must always do top notch things. You must be rich, or you must be really refined or something. And really, it might not mean anything. It might just mean that you're fronting, or it might just mean that you're really picky or whatever. But we have this heuristic, this bias that if someone has, really high standards for the people that they date, then they must get a lot of people that are attracted to them. But of course, it doesn't work that way, or maybe it works that way for the people that you don't want to attract. But it also can push people away that you might want to attract.
I think that Shake would not have gone for me if we were in the real world. I think Shake definitely wants the most attractive woman in the room, kind of.
Okay, that's an interesting thing, and I think it's true. I think Shake might even admit that he wouldn't be attracted to her if they met in the real world. And I mean, maybe he'll say something different when he actually meets her, but so what are we supposed to think of that? It's true, and again, both of them agree with that statement, I think. And certainly the way Shake was talking in the beginning, it seems to be accurate. But if Shake has changed truly and has realized what is meaningful in life and important in life, then that's okay, right? That I in terms of, I wouldn't worry about Deepti in a situation like that. So I guess the question is, has Shake really changed? And does he really understand his insecurities and the way that he will come across, the way he fronts as a way of making up for that? Undoubtedly that will come up again, because it's not like people just change overnight typically. So I guess the question is, will he be able to manage that moving forward? Maybe we'll find out.
I don't think he expected me to look the way I looked. He went straight for the ass, which I love.
Yeah, I mean, they seem to have genuine physical chemistry, which, is helpful.
You did not just do that.
I'll do it for you.
In the Indian culture, when you get married, the wife touches the husband's feet, and I told him I'm not doing that because we're equals. And so the fact that he touched my feet was perfect.
2 thumbs up for that. Progressiveness, equality, a gesture like that. That's great. I like it. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.